Now that you have your clone stamp layer set up and the clone stamp tool set up, we're going to start trying to get rid of some of these trees. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And what I need to do is I need to set a source point. You set a source point for your clone stamp. The source point is just where it's going to copy from. Well, the sky pretty much looks all the same on either side, so we're fine. I'm going to hold down Alt. It changes to kind of a crosshair option. And I'm just going to click somewhere in that area. And you'll notice that as I mouse over, I can start to see what I copied from. And all I have to do is actually just paint in that layer, or paint in the clouds. Now you'll notice when I get over here, I run into a hard line. And you'll notice just up above, let me reset the source point so you can see. As I click and drag, you'll notice a little other crosshair just above my circle, or wherever I set my source point to. So that's where it's copying from. It's showing me where it's copying from. And so once I hit the edge, it's going to have an edge too, which is why when I set it over here and I start to copy, it hits that edge and it has nowhere else to go, and so it just stops. So I need to kind of fix that. I'm going to come back over to here. Let's maybe set an area there. And I want you to see again what's happening. As I start to paste, I'm going to start painting in the trees again. The reason for that is my original source point, see where that crosshair is, and if I undo, it was pulling from this area right here. It kind of looks to see what used to be there as well. So sometimes this can get a little confusing. So oftentimes I will set my source point, I'll click and drag, I'll set my source point again, option click, set another source point, option click. You just do it a little bit at a time and it tends to work just a little bit better, and you can blend in just a little bit more. So I've got kind of this funky darker area that I'm just going to kind of, you just want to break it up just a little bit. And I could do the same, whoops. I was a little too far zoomed in. I'm going to do the same on this side. I usually work with a smaller brush. It just depends on what we're working with. But setting different points will help blend it in just a little bit better, because you want to break it up so you don't really notice that we used the clone stamp tool. That looks pretty good. Let's get a little bit of this. I don't want to get too far. Just kind of break it up a little bit so it doesn't look really noticeable. Alright, now we come to the much harder part. We need to somehow get this whole thing all the way down, which is going to be a little bit difficult because now we're dealing with, instead of just basically one color, we're dealing with bits and pieces of different things. And so it's going to make it a little more difficult. I usually work with a much smaller brush, and I'm going to place it on the edge of something. I'm going to place my crosshair again, hold down Alt to set your source point, set it far enough away that you can have some room to work with, but you don't want to set it too far away because then you might not get the same effect that you want. You want to see, so I've got some lighted area here. So I'm going to try and keep that lighted area in it. So I'm going to set it right there, but that means I'm going to have to work with a very small brush. I might have to zoom in a little bit more. So the reason why I set it on the edge of something is because now I can see and I can match this up down here with that correct edge. So as I come down, and I have to do this a little bit at a time, and I've got to reset my source point, because otherwise it's not going to work out very well. So set my source point again. I'm just going to kind of come down into here. Oops, see, I messed up on that one, so I've got to do it again. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. You've got to kind of go back and forth and try and get this exactly where you need to get it. So I can get rid of those right there. I'm kind of extending it. It doesn't have to be perfect. All we're doing is just trying to break it up enough that we don't really notice it. So that's probably good, and I'm going to transition back to maybe a little bit darker area. So I'm going to come back up here and pull something from there, zoom back in. And I can make this one a little bit bigger because I have a little bit more room to work with. I'm When I come down, I'm just trying to get this as best I can all the way into the middle. Now, as I work my way up, I'm probably going to need to reset my source point, because as I notice, if I start coming up too far, I'm going to hit another beam right there, and that's not going to look very good. So I'm going to try and stay right about there. And again, I can keep doing this. I'm going to set maybe another point right there. Again, try and match this up just right. So work my way down. And I'm going to go in later and kind of fix that up. But now I can kind of take some of these source points here. Again, option click to create your source point, and I can get rid of some of those pieces. I'm going to go in and I can fix this a little bit more later. So you hold down option, click to set a point that you're going to copy from, and then when you start to click and drag, it will just copy those same pixels that were in that area that you option clicked into the area that you are now dragging. So the clone stamp tool, where I've already done a pretty good job. I do need to fix this a little bit, and everything is on this layer. This is what I've created. Instead of it being on this layer, it's on its own layer. So if I messed up on something and I wanted to bring those trees back in, I just go to my eraser tool and I can just erase what I did. So that's why we do it this way. Make sure that that's set up. Have fun with the clone stamp. It's a difficult tool to use sometimes, but once you get used to it, it can be really powerful.